area of compliance, really your role is going to be, it's a function of business and it's a facilitator of business. Too many people think that actually compliance is about saying, don't do this, you can't do this, no, don't do this. This is not what good compliance is about. And those who reach the top of compliance within global organizations are the individuals who are able to understand the business they operate in, understand the risks, manage the risks, and facilitate the business. Because if you keep saying, no, you can't do this transaction, then there's no business. You're going to be out of a job. So really, compliance is really guiding senior management, guiding the organization through doing business, but in a compliant manner, which basically ensures that the company can run profitably, but in a way where its interests and its standing is not going to be compromised with the regulator. And increasingly, it's also about authority, senior management. Being in a senior management position these days comes with increasing responsibility and accountability. And as a compliance officer, and the more senior you are, you need to make decisions or give advice to senior management upon which their livelihood, liberty, and professional reputation ultimately may rest. So it's a serious endeavor, compliance, but it continues to evolve. So that's my, as I said, basically it's simply just doing the right thing. That's how I would describe compliance. But what would you say?
Yeah, I think easier said than done, right? Otherwise, we won't have all the compliance breaches. But I think I agree with Jeremy. One thing is in terms of how compliance has evolved. If we, for us who's been in the industry for many years, and observe how the regulators regulate the industry. I think in the past, perhaps 10 years ago, they would look at only the sort of the rules compliance, right? So they would say, okay, you've breached this particular section of the code.
And in compliance speaking, do you think that there's big chance in the Chinese firm?
Yeah, well, there have been over the last 10 years an increasing number of PRC firms basically coming out of China and setting up offshore. And typically, Hong Kong has been the first, well, we're part of China, but it's the first international expansion. So if someone's going to open an overseas office, certainly in the asset management area, it is in the PRC, they'll open in Hong Kong. And so someone will have to be looking after the compliance. Yeah, it definitely is. It's a growing area. And if you look at the China remains, no matter what industry you talk about, 99% China's going to have the label as being the fastest growing industry. Financial services definitely is one of them. But what has happened is the fund management industry has only been around in China for 20, 25 years at maximum. So it's a very new industry. So you've got people, operating in that industry who don't have, there's not a lot of depth of experience, particularly in compliance side. And so I think that I see as a sort of a definite need, but also a definite sort of a challenge in terms of, when you're sitting in an overseas office, let's say Hong Kong, you have head office in China or somewhere else. As I said, you've got to culturally you've got to be aligned, and you've got to be able to tell someone, actually, you know what, the way that you maybe do it in head office is not going to be, it's not going to be compliant here. So actually we can't do it this way. We've got to change. So I find that is sometimes a challenge to give that message, and sometimes it's a challenge if you give the message and actually it's not being implemented in the way that it should. It's even more a challenge because But as I said, compliance officers now, the SFC is giving them more. You've got credibility, so it's a question of maybe educating sometimes head office to say, look, okay, not only am I going to be responsible, you are as well, because you're in senior management. And then once people understand they are actually responsible in a senior management position, then their approach starts to, they understand. And sometimes, it's not just, let's do the business. It's, okay, what are the risks? How do we mitigate the risks to the organization and also myself if I'm in a senior management position?
I think if I look at my clients, right, I think definitely there is still some catching up for the Chinese clients to do in relation to compliance, just because they are newer to this market, right? They just set up in Hong Kong for the past 5 years. And when you look at some of the biggest houses, they've already sort of been dealing with these regulations, and they have sophisticated system, etc. So definitely there's a lot of catch up, and I think there is definitely demand for people to work there. From a career perspective, I think there is a balance in terms of learning, for one, right? Where do you want to learn? Obviously, you want to learn from international organizations that have a big budget on compliance, and then there are different issues. And once you move into a Chinese organization, then maybe you start losing some of it, maybe because they're more early stage in the issues, right? And then I think the second thing that Jeremy alluded to is culture, right? So it's very important from tone at the top. And then I'm not saying Chinese organizations have, not a bad tone at the top. I think it really depends on organization. So I think it's just the assessment of that particular organization and their compliance culture, right? So if they have the right culture and actually they trust you, as Jeremy said, because you carry authority, you've got experience, actually that could be a very interesting career, right, in terms of building out your team in this organization.